at the first try, this meeting is taking a prospective participant to another link. And then when they try with the new link you provided, they are now getting to the right places. So if someone could just look at these issues in the background, would be grateful.
Now many people are participating. The number is, the participation is enhancing immediately. We reached 27, 28, 28, 29, 31, 32. Yeah, immediately.
Good, and I'm forwarding as well.
Good morning, good afternoon from different parts of the world. Please give us a couple of minutes more to allow people to join this development dialogue series, and then we shall start. Just give us, please, a couple of minutes. Thank you very much, and welcome. So good morning, good afternoon once again from Nairobi, Kenya. It is by my time now, 10 minutes past 8 a.m. New York time and 10 minutes past 3 p.m. in Nairobi. Wherever you are in the world, we welcome you to this edition of the Development Dialogues. I'm delighted to welcome you on behalf of the Africa Borderlands Center based in Nairobi, which is hosting this particular event, which is themed Unpacking Promising Practices on Resilience Building in Africa's Lectured Borderlands. My name is Kenny Debolaji, and I work as Program Manager at the UNDP Africa Borderlands Center here in Nairobi. On today's dialogue, we shall be discussing a part of Africa which was once the center of interregional trade, rich in natural resources and having one of the largest water bodies on the planet, the Lake Chad region, straddling Cameroon, Chad, Niger, and Nigeria. In the recent past, this region has gone through a rough patch and has been an epicenter of insecurity, poverty, and climate-induced livelihood challenges. Insurgency in this part of the world has led to fatalities, displacement of hundreds of thousands of persons, and massive humanitarian and developmental challenges. In response to these challenges, development partners, including UNDP, have implemented wide-ranging stabilization programs, notably on PVE, livelihood support to returnees, rebuilding of damaged community infrastructure, transitional justice, and local governance. In spite of the complex challenges, there are promising approaches that have been deployed by UNDP and other partners to tackle these problems. But there are also challenges. So the session today will discuss the progress and challenges, including the lessons that can be learned and how this can help us implement stabilization further. So we shall begin the session with the screening of a video depicting a human story from one of the borderland communities in Chad. Then a 30-minute panel discussion will be taken on board, and this will focus on key issues emanating from the current stabilization programs in the region. Midway into the discussion, we shall feature a short video of testimonials from some of our beneficiaries in UNDP Niger. Thereafter, a second round of intervention from the panelists shall be entertained, followed by contributions and questions from participants. Please note that the participants will only be able to type in their questions through the Q&A box in the Zoom interface. As the questions are being asked, the panelists will be asked to provide their responses and comments. So to close, the panelists will be opportune to give their final reflections, while I will round up by recapping the key points running through the interventions. The duration of this dialogue series is 1 hour, 30 minutes, and we really want it to be as participatory as possible. We have 3 panelists today who are going to be featured and are going to share their experiences from the field. The first panelist we have is Reverend Father Dr. Atabakindo, who works as an expert, subject matter expert in the Lake Chad region, but is also the head of the National Peace Committee of Nigeria. The second panelist we have here is Eloy Kwadio, the Deputy Resident Representative of UNDP in Niger. And the third panelist we have is Zenu Umar, the team leader of the Africa Borderlands Center in Nairobi. We look forward to a very interesting and engaging discussion, particularly getting insights on the realities on the field in the Lake Chad region. I will now give the floor to the technical team to take us through the first video, which is coming from the stabilization program in Niger. And from there, we move to the substantive panel discussion. Once again, thank you all for coming, and we look forward to an engaging discussion. Thank you.
قاعدة في قطن في جرلميس هراز البيار في ستة حنا معني في تشات وهسه من بروجة جلينا أنا بريسيدان دي بيرو سيفيليزاسيون وفي غوركوما بريسيدان في غوركوما وأنا من يعطوا شالوني في هلة شغل الحيوان كما شفت إلا شفنا شغل العجيب ومن بروجة جلينا ده أولا جابوا لنا تيراب وجابوا لنا موتيرات تيراب كل أنواع كتير وجابوا لنا موتيرات ناس خدموا فوقها وجابوا لنا طاعونة وجابوا لنا في الهلة جابوا لنا بنا اللي جابوا لنا ده بقينا بكان بنا هنا الأكل لقينا بنا هنا الجين لقينا بنا هنا جندرميري لقينا بنا في السوق ولقينا بناء في ناس عندنا الكوميتي ده الشغل اللي لقينا في السنة اللي جابوا لنا فيه اللي للعسكر جندرميري جابوا لهم موتاير وجابوا للعسكر الآخرين عندنا موتيات رجال الأمن والدفاع جابوا لهم موتيات وفي الهيلة شغل اللي جابوا لنا ده هسه عندي وصية مع أخواتي في ماما القسموا لهم أنا خدمة جابوا نوصل فوق أخواتي ولا الرجال كلهم نعلم من الأخدمة أنا هراته خليه يهرد فوقها ينفع معاه يدخل له يوديه قدام ينفع هو معه ياله في البيت وحاسه من هنا لقدام جيت لي في تطور شغل انا حاسه لقينا انا مستفيقين قاعدين راس وايد وعقلنا وايد وشاورينا وايد كان معك شغل نفرده كل ما نلقوا فيه هسه شغل اللي لقينا ما شاء الله الحمد لله لقينا كتير وليه اخي يعني لأخواتي الأمين والصوم شغل الأنطم ده يعطوكوا يقردين ويخدم فوقه تراب الأنطم ده يخدموا فوقه لأي شيء كله بانفاهم بإيالهم في البيت. هسه جينا في زرعنا مختار عدم وكل من الناس اللي بيسه ده وكل خضار الأنطم ده تراب الأنطم ده وفوقه مرتين. المهم ده هسه وكل نجد أول مرة وكل فيه المرة ولا شيء كانوا مستواقوا في جدا على ساقوا في جميلة على ود نيجيريا أول درب ده ما أدري أما ده الحمد لله حاجة نقدر نودي كان أخرجنا نساوي وهسه قدر بروجيل جادا شغل الأنقاض دار كله غير إلا كله غيرت مرة ناس وادينا المين تبقى كله أخذوا أبين المين بيو كل هسه أدوا بيوتهم هذا بالمين ده زرع أدين كل هسه ده تراب أدين مين ده كل هسه ده ما شاء الله خدمة أنا وده ماشي قدام ليه يانا كل هسه في اللي يقول كل عباتهم يقدر يكفوا ودوم يقول ده شغل ده بيجي هنا عن مرة القصر أنا ده تراكتير جدا هو كبير مكان هنا ده تراب ده كتير مرة واحد تراكتير كل واحد كل ما يقدر عشان مكان ما ده تقدر فرصة يومين ثلاثة أربعة يمشي أربعة تكسرك وما تلقى قراءة تلقى تدور وقراءة فيني تقدر ما تلقى ده تراكتير كل كان ندور ده يزود لنا ما نعرفه كان واحد كل يبقى هنا الشيء في جدة هنا ده.
Thank you very much to the technical team for screening that video, but also to colleagues in African Borderlands Center, Karin, for the good work of going to the field in Chad to get the perspective of our beneficiaries on the stabilization program. But just to summarize, the video was showcasing the impact of UNDP's work in a community called Guite Village in Chad. And it's basically analyzing the different strands of our stabilization work, from helping persons to return to communities liberated from terrorists, to helping them to develop livelihoods, and to providing community security. Without much ado, this video actually takes us to the first intervention that we're going to have from our country office in Niger, represented by the Deputy Resident Representative, Eloy. And Eloy, we really want you to share with us why is stabilization important to the borderland communities in the Chad? And for the example of Niger, what is the scope of your stabilization program in the communities, and how does this add value to community stakeholders? Eloy, over to you.
Thank you, Kihinde. Dear colleagues and participants, I would like to let you know that for Niger, that this program is implemented in a very difficult security situation in the country, because the country is in the center of the three areas of instability along with the borders, namely the region of Lakched and Liptako-Guruma. But it is important to notice that we implement this project in the perspective of seeking stability and consolidating the peace in the region, helping to lay the foundation for sustainable development. So to respond clearly to your question, why stabilization is important. Importance of stabilization is based on the need of the state to install a political and security condition for voluntary returns of displaced people. And this is one of the key elements that we have in our program here in Nigeria, because the government is strongly pushing to support UNDP in the implementation of this strategy in terms of strengthening and trying to restore the social contract between the state and the citizen. This is one of the first important thing. And that the stabilization is in a very integrated approach in terms of facilitating the return to the normalcy in the country, and the population also facing some difficulties in terms of coming back in the place. And both of the sides of the borders, we are trying to support the deployment of the defense and security, and improve the rule of law, access to justice, and civil status of an improvement of local governance. So the implementation of this project in Niger shows us three key things in terms of the border community. The first one was that at the identification, selection of localities to be impacted, they were not necessarily aligned with the need of strengthening the cross-border cooperation. That's the first thing. And as you know, the return to the stability, both sides of the borders, it gives a very good possibility for the population to make the exchange in terms of people, movement of people and goods, and the cultural exchange and alert system in terms of climate change issues sometimes. The stabilization also should be considered, as we find here in Niger, that it is a key foundation for the recovery and development and peace building. So it is not an isolated project approach. It is an integrated approach, and we push to have this stabilization as the foundation of the recovery. For the borders, cross-borders cooperation, as you know, it is a process. And this process allows to strengthen the political dialogue at the sub-region level, and also the alignment of the political effort of state concern. So regarding the second aspect of your question, Bolaji, it's the scope of stabilization in Niger. The scope was, in fact, interrelated to the border issues that I mentioned earlier, but it is also focused to the achievement of at least the 4 of the 9 objectives of the regional strategy. First one is the governance and the social contract. The second one is the socio-economic recovery and environmental sustainability that we did in the DIFA region, with some example very clear in terms of recovery and socio-economic sustainability. The prevention of violence and violent extremism and peace building. And the last one is one of the key pillars of our intervention here in Niger: empowerment and inclusion of women and youth. So I would like to conclude with some key figures regarding Niger in terms of the scope of our intervention. The scope of the program is that 6 localities were concerned, with about 3,500 households, representing about 24,500 people. So the household headed by the women in this program was about 20 3% of this group of people. And the youth are also a key element of this program, and they represent around 18% of our program in terms of scope. So 6 localities in the DIFA region, Lac Basin region, 3,500 households concerned, at least 23% of women and 18% of youth concerned. So I will stop here for this time, and maybe we can exchange further to have some clarification. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eloy. That was really interesting to see the perspective of our country of in Niger. But just to remind participants that you don't have to wait until the end of the first round of interventions to write your questions and comments. You can use the Q&A box to already start writing questions so that the panelists will take note of your questions and comment, and then in the second round, they will be able to respond. We have gotten the UNDP perspective. Father Bakindo, you have worked extensively in communities across the Lake Chad, and you are familiar with the outsiders' perspective. We really want to know from you, what do you think resilience means to the people of the communities in the Lake Chad region? I have other follow-up questions. For example, I want to know what community-based practices have contributed to successful stabilization in the marginal borderlands, because we are not assuming that it is only because UNDP is intervening that we have pockets of successes. We also want to see what is it that the communities themselves have contributed to successes of stabilization program. I also want to know from you, what is the level of synergy between communities and development partners in this stabilization journey? And how does this impact effectiveness of the interventions? So many questions, but we're asking all of this because we know that you are equal to the task.
Yeah, I would try to remain within my panel. I'll be as brief as possible. From my experience traveling around the Lake Chad, one of the first understanding of resilience actually for communities is the fact that communities just want to understand the nature of this conflict. Why will these things suddenly happen to them? And that understanding gives them the strength to come up with strategies to safeguard, their community. So understanding the nature of the conflict in itself is a huge source of building resilience. And number two, most of the communities want to remove some of these probably legal obstacles that will, derail community efforts in trying to use community initiatives to counter. So they probably need government approval to build up their own strategies, their own policies on how to counter these people within their own context. So for them, having that approval without unnecessary security bottlenecks, because they are not recognized security agencies, the risk is that you can easily develop different forms of non-state actors. So a lot of communities will like to have a very quick approval from the government to undertake, ways of countering some of these insecurities. And then the other aspect is building economic capacity, particularly for women who have lost their houses and their businesses. For them, building their resilience means giving them back their economic power to engage, to look after their families, and then to look after their communities. And then when you ask about what are some of the real local community practices that have supported, stabilization around the Lake Chad, the first thing I can think of is early warning systems, not necessarily in this, international Western conceptualized form of early warning system. It's a local way of passing on information from the local people down to the traditional ruler. So for example, if there's in your state, they have a system where in a community, if you suddenly see a strange person who seems not to belong to that community and you have never seen him before, you have to quickly report to the key stakeholders, either your parents or to the community leader, and they can call that person to the palace of the local chief to questioning where I'm coming from, what I'm doing in our community and all that. So this traditional early warning system is really working effective. That is also linked to another practice. It's called community forms of accountability, because the justice system can be very, very slow. So they want a situation where people who are involved can quickly be mentioned, be identified. And if those people are not captured, then the community elders get in touch with their parents, to see how these people can be held to account for some of the activities that they have carried out. Another thing that has worked very effectively is the formation of these community vigilante groups, community security networks. And thank God the state, some of the states have actually recognized that and have given them the mandate to work together with, state agencies and other state recognized institutions. And the final thing here is the issue of sulhu, in terms of community-led initiatives where they're trying to form, issues of reconciliation and forgiveness and all that. And if you look at Nigeria, for example, this is where certain states are willing to negotiate and even reconcile with the bandits. Other states are insisting, no, you cannot at all, negotiate or even reconcile with some of these extremist groups. And you will even discover that some communities disregard what the state thinks. In Niger State, for example, they go ahead to negotiate with these extremist groups, and in return, they even offer them cash, offer them motorcycles, protect our communities or leave our communities alone so that they can have some peace, so that they can have some stability. This may not be seen as this formal, stabilization of the state, but is what the community does in order to survive. So these forms of sulhu and even negotiation, if you look at Kaduna State, the kidnap of the students from one of the colleges, where the Kaduna State government said they are not going to at all negotiate with these extremist groups. What the parents of those children did was to come together, raise funds, negotiate, and get their kids out. So these are some of the community initiatives that we can see. And my final comment here is the level of synergy that is now existing between international development partners and local communities. What has come out very strongly is community consultation and initiative. In those days, a lot of times communities are not consulted, but increasingly in most of the projects, we see communities being engaged in terms of conceptualization, implementation, and even evaluation. And I think that this is a very key, important element that we can see. Thank you, Kehinde.
Thank you very much, Father Brakindo. Synergy, you have mentioned consultation, but maybe by the time we start taking the questions and we go into the interactive session, we can see, we would like to see more areas of synergies or areas of challenges, with co-creating with local communities. The next question is for Zenu. Zenu, you visited parts of the Sahel regions, which are similar contexts as the Lake Chad recently, and you had a first-hand experience of how challenging it is to work in this context. Based on that, how will you see development partners' engagement with security forces in particular? Because we've talked a lot about the communities, about the stakeholders, but less on the security forces. How do you see this connection? And then what is the impact of this on the effectiveness and sustainability of some of the stabilization initiatives that we have invested in? Zen, over to you.
Thank you very much, Bolaji. Thanks a lot. Actually, speaking after the two people at the ground, they are in Niger, and at the same time, the researcher who has been spent a lot of time in this area is very difficult, but let me try to see. Actually, as explained by the rest of the team and the video, the challenges are immense, and but within all these challenges imposed by the asymmetrical warfare in the Lake Chad Basin, development partners in the sub-region have supported government-led crisis response and recovery, including through the rehabilitation and restoration of infrastructure in areas that had experienced wars and crises. In this process, UNDP officers in Chad, country offices in Chad, Cameroon, Niger, and Nigeria have really engaged with security forces to facilitate the return of refugees and IDPs, provide safety for the returnees, address the issues relating to human rights protection within the security forces, engage in demining and other safety exercises to facilitate the return of farmers and pastoralists to their business and provide actually atmosphere conducive to the restoration of reconciliation and social cohesion, which is very much lacking in the area. So UNDP country offices, with the support of our donors and partners, have directed most of their actually energies to enhance the capacities of the armed forces to respect human rights and the rule of law in those zones, including the improvements to the armed forces rules of engagement to align with the international law. For instance, in Niger, in Nigeria, these are very much well actually established practices. In addition, the implementation of community security programs also really significantly contribute for the safety of the returnees. This is imminent in some of the provinces of Nigeria, for instance, Adamawa and Bruno states. So these are some of the efforts. In terms of effectiveness and sustainability, these initiatives, I believe that the development of an innovative approach is still required, especially civil military. How can we establish a model of governance that mainly focused on the civil military coordination with the security forces as one of the pillars of our stabilization initiative is looks very important. This pillar should be actually focused on building the synergy between security forces and formal and informal local governance system through religious, traditional, and women leaders to improve confidence building between the military authorities and civilians. The other objective should be to improve community security, strengthen liaison on responses, and enable more civilian access to the liberated areas. It will also ultimately benefit people in the borderlands, particularly the key border crossing points, some of which are not being currently inhabited by civilians. So these actions definitely looks very innovative and give a lot of chance to access the local communities and through the government institutions around there. Thank you very much, Bolaji.
Thank you so much, Zenu, for the intervention and for highlighting the criticality of civil-military coordination and cooperation, which is CIMIC. You seem to be saying this is an area that needs to be strengthened in the stabilization program if the successes recorded so far are to be sustainable. Let's pause it for now and try to see the insight from the field. Again, this time around, we are going to Niger. We want to see what exactly is the portfolio of innovation. Please, the technical team. For meanwhile, Zenu, you can please mute your video. Thank you.
The training and the feedback and the group discussions and all that. Together with them, we will design how they want this to. So that's one.
La région de Difa au Niger est un espace de vie qui regorge d'énormes potentialités agro-pastorales. Elle est aussi devenue, ces dernières années, une zone du bassin du lac Tchad particulièrement confrontée à une montée de l'extrémisme violent du groupe Boko Haram. Il s'agit aujourd'hui d'assurer la stabilité de cette région en accompagnant les populations déplacées et retournées dans leur recherche légitime du droit à l'existence. Le gouvernement nigérien s'est investi dans cette perspective avec le concours de ses partenaires financiers et l'appui du Programme des Nations Unies pour le développement en ouvrant le guichet pour le Niger du Fonds régional pour la stabilisation de la région du bassin du lac Tchad. Il s'agit d'assurer la sécurité des communautés, de rendre opérationnelles les infrastructures essentielles et les services de base et d'assurer aux ménages et aux populations bénéficiaires la disponibilité des moyens d'existence. Et cela avec l'implication de chacun et de tous, notamment les jeunes et les femmes, leviers du développement et acteurs de paix. Rejoignez-nous pour le développement et la stabilité de la région de Difa et du Niger de manière générale.
Thank you very much for screening that video for us. It really gives us a perspective, a comprehensive perspective of the situation in Niger. But again, we've had, yes, progress made, but there are challenges with access, there are challenges with coordination. But what I found interesting in the video is we kept seeing women and women and women, which means, at least using the video as entry point, there is a lot of work being done with women, given that the conflict in the Lake Chad have disproportionate impact on women more than the men. The next question, therefore, is to Eloy, and we would really like to, use this video, the element from here to illustrate to us very clearly how, in spite of these challenges of access, challenges of synergy, you've been able to work more with women in collectively shaping the stabilization agenda and ensuring that it works for them in a very challenging borderland context. Eloy, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Kehinde. You see that the situation is indeed critical, but we have to break this barrier of women engagement, which is a very key point of our stabilization program in Niger. We start the implementation process of the program through an inclusive approach of all the stakeholders, and indeed the local government actors, the security forces and the population. We mix the traditional leaders, as my colleague mentioned earlier in one of his points, and the women and youth are embedded in the strong commitment in terms of leadership in the implementation of the project local governance activities. So with this approach, we try to make women more included in the governance mechanism and throughout the project implementation process, as I mentioned. And we try to use or customize our the principle of the 3S, the speed, the scale, and the social contract. The speeding was to help us to tackle the key critical issues that women and youth should address in terms of identifying the priorities, in terms of interventions that we have to implement in the Difa region in the 6 localities that were selected. And we use also one of the very tools like the cash for work during the construction phases of our operation in the region for the medical center, the local community schools. And also we try to make one thing is it's a bit special with Niger is that for the recruitment of the people involved in the project, we use the national community volunteers, and then we try to empower them to be those people who are dealing with the population, the beneficiaries, And in this group, we have at least 40% of our cohorts were young women involved for the localities and interventions. So this mobilization of the community through this national community volunteers was critical in terms of facilitating, swifting our intervention in terms of the comprehension of the goals that we are pushing to reach. And we try also to create a kind of confidence in terms of bringing hope to the population, strengthening the social contract and trust between the local authorities and the population. Indeed, the military forces were involved in the process to secure the infrastructure that we're building and facilitate the implementation of all the project. And at the end of this one, and this is one of the key lessons that we are going to transfer in the forthcoming program in the Liptako-Guruma region, it's the ripple effects of these activities and the role of the local community, which are leading the process in terms of decision making, but also in terms of implementation. And putting women and youth at the heart of our intervention was very critical in terms of success that we have so far registered in the DIFA region. I will stop here, Bolaji, and maybe further question will give me the opportunity to go further. Thank you.
Thank you, Eloy, for the intervention. Talking of women and youth, I think about 75% of informal cross-border traders in Africa are women. And in fact, part of the criticisms against stabilization as being implemented is that it is helping some of the beneficiaries to cope and to survive, but not really developing them. And this is where you come in, Zenu, as the team leader of the Africa Borderlands Center, where you recently launched 2 initiatives. One is the Trade for Peace in the Takugoma, and the second is the 2021 Innovation Challenge for the Africa Borderlands on informal cross-border trade. How can the center provide support to country offices in upscaling some of the practices that have been mentioned by Eloy around the Lake Chad, particularly for informal cross-border traders, and also those who are tied to the ICBT value chain, like farmers and pastoralists? Zenu, if you could just share some insight that can benefit us, we'd be grateful. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Bolaji. Actually, Africa Borderlands Center is a new flagship for RBA, and it is launched recently with the top priorities of actually closely working with the country offices in key priority areas. And the country offices for us are very critical. For instance, I would like to thank the Niger country office for sharing some of the promising practices in the sub-region from the perspective of the beneficiaries, because Borderland is for mainly focusing beneficiaries, and it's projectized based on the benefits that it provided to the communities. The videos also demonstrate the high resilience of the people. For us, the ABC, we are collaborating with UNDP country offices in Niger within the context of LBC project being funded by the Japanese government to prioritize the needs of borderland traders, particularly female-headed households, youths, and other groups. We are doing this through funding support to expand agricultural production, expand value chain, reduce food insecurity, and of course, strengthen the incentives for violence prevention, straddling the Liptako-Guruma border areas, because violence is a critical challenge in this area, both in terms of access and, of course, the safety and security of the communities living around there. Through our innovation challenge for 2021, we hope to support the borderland traders in the Lake Chad countries, as well as other parts of the Sahel, to improve their access to finance in a variety of ways. There are actually 5 eligible portfolios of innovations that can be funded by the ABC through our 2021 Open Innovation Challenge. The first is facilitation of market information. Through this, we intend to open more opportunities for market access by providing real-time market information to the traders. Secondly, through innovative resource mobilization methods, we intend to improve informal cross-border traders' access to capital and strengthen their connection to the financial sector. Thirdly, we also wish to explore how to extend technology to the borderlands in a way that can enhance smart and seamless financial transaction for traders living in the high-risk communities. Furthermore, we hope to support the improvement of wealth generation for startup business through investment readiness programs, particularly training and mentorship for young females. Finally, we are desirous to actually fund generable activities which are focused on reducing pollution and greenhouse emission, whilst minimizing waste and improving efficiency in the use of resources within the borderland locations where informal cross-border trade takes place. Beyond putting a smile on the face of the beneficiaries, we want to go on a voyage of discovery with them through a partnership that makes them to be co-creators rather than mere beneficiaries of the development solutions. We want them to be part and parcel of the solution mapping and the solution making, actually. So this is what where I can stop. Bolaji, thank you very much.
Thank you, Zenu. You seem to be telling us that you are going to take stabilization to the next level. So beyond beneficiaries just coping and surviving, that they can now also be at the commanding height of development practice. This is quite a tall ambition, and I can only wish the Borderlands Center luck on this. We are seeing some questions from our participants, but we just have one more question to ask to Father Atabakindo, and then we open it up for questions and for interaction. Father Bakindo, we have just had what Zenu said about innovation, about helping the communities in the Takugoma, but also within the LCBC to not only survive, but to become creators of solutions to their problems. And they've been doing this, because in these regions, in spite of the war and crisis, they continue to thrive. But there is a little problem, and that problem is in the area of cross-border coordination, you know, and you have experienced it firsthand. When some policies are implemented in Nigeria and they're not, there is no complementary effort in Chad or Niger, you have reversals. So because of this, I would really like to see what is your perspective on the issue of cross-border dimension. And I would mention specifically the security policies on PVE, counterterrorism, DDRR processes are different from one country to another. Transitional justice mechanisms are happening in parts of Nigeria and Niger, but not in Cameroon and Chad. You also have situations where the strategies used by the military differ from one country to another. How do we find a way to synergize the action of the 4 countries implicated in this crisis in a way that what Zenu invests in the borderland will not go to waste? I ask this question because this is a critical problem. Father Bakindo?
You are absolutely spot on, Kehinde. In fact, right now, the Nigerian government is developing a roadmap for transitional justice, purely for the Nigerian, for the Nigerian nation, without taking into account the regional aspect. And these are really the challenges that we have. And for me, everything now comes back to the regional framework for stabilization. How can that become the central focus for synergy and for everything? And it's a big, big policy issue, political issue, having the political will on the side of the government. I don't think any NGO on its own or any development partner, independent of the different governments, will be able to handle that. So that synergy must start really with the different governments, of the Lake Chad border areas, having the political will to really deploy the regional stabilization framework and strategy that is already existing, and to see how we can work together. And therefore, that means, for example, if you are deploying the military, is it possible that those militaries can all be brought together and kept for some time in terms of training, in terms of tactics, in terms of ideology, before even being deployed? Because there are language barriers. The borders are very vast, and you cannot simply cover everything. And there are even border disputes. So how can you even have a regional strategy when these border disputes, have not been settled? So for me, the first thing is having the political will by the different governments to actually come together. And then number two, governments must be willing to compromise. So for example, there is no need to say Nigeria first or Niger first or Chad first. It has to be the Lake Chad first. So that level of compromising must seem, actually to be done. And one of the final things I'll mention here is more about sharing information rather than hoarding, those information. And this also links to the kind of CSOs or CBOs or international development partners that are functioning. They may be functioning in Nigeria and Niger and Chad and having the same objective at their own level as international development partner. But you will discover that it may be Amnesty International, it may be Red Cross, they'll be expelled from one country, but they're also functioning in another country, simply because politically the government of that particular country does not seem to agree with them. So sometimes this sort of regional political contestation between a particular international development partner and the particular government of that country does not actually support, the regional stabilization strategy that should be implemented. So my point is that everything has to be linked to the regional framework that we already have. And government should have the political will to support international development partners, to support NGOs. And the final thing is capacity and training. A lot of government, not necessarily the CSOs, but government agencies really require the skills and the capacity in dealing with terrorism, counter-terrorism, violent extremism issues, particularly here in Nigeria. So those capacities must be trained to support, processes for stabilization. So the political will and government willing to collaborate are some of the things. Otherwise, I don't see how any other agency can do that without the government.
Thank you very much, Father Bakindo. We now have 30 minutes before the end of this session, and we have questions coming in. But Father Bakindo, I think I will ask the first question. So there is a governors forum being facilitated by development partners across the 4 countries, 3 of the states in Nigeria, and also some of the regions in Cameroon, Chad, and Niger. What do you think can be done to make this forum more effective in terms of coordinating some of the efforts you have mentioned just now? And I will read out the other questions to the panelists, and I will call on the panelists to respond to them as you deem fit. So the first question is from Amina Issa Umaru. She said, "Thank you very much for the presentations. How far are adolescent girls considered in planning and approaches, as their needs are different from those of women and adolescent boys and youth? Thank you." She works with Plan International. And then the second question is from Goda Keng. The question goes thus: how do you appreciate the support of the LCB states to the ambitious work you are doing within the communities? How do you position or interact with state-led initiatives in the same communities you are working in? and this question is actually related to the question on the Governors Forum that I asked earlier. The third question is from Jimper Neraya Bagabo. He asked, the conflict has been going on for almost a decade. For the local population, the major issue is, of course, security. It looks like many things were done to stabilize the area. However, the situation is still same. What should be done differently to make sure that the whole recover peace? And then we have Manon Bevers. He said, thank you again. What are the current CSO identification, empowerment, and connecting initiatives in the region? The final question is from Samdo. I think it's more of a comment from Samdo. It says, with growing incident of climate insecurity, borderland climate security will be key in the future. I believe our borderland is keeping an eye on this phenomenon. So I will pass on the mic to the panelists, starting from Zenu, and then to Eloy, and then further back in that order. Zenu, over to you.
Thank you very much, Bolaji, and thank you very much, the participants, for the very important contribution. I will focus on how, what can we do, because these conflicts have been there for the last decades, and we are still talking about the conflicts. Not only we are talking about the conflicts, you know, the extent of the conflict dynamics in this region is very actually challenging to the extent that even the local authorities themselves are not able to access their own communities and, you know, address the challenges faced by the communities themselves. So this situation, unless and otherwise, that's why we are saying that unless and otherwise an innovative model of governance is in place, definitely we cannot continue in this situation for so long, because the communities, you know, if the communities are not accessed by the states and governments and the development actors, definitely they can easily be taken by others who can manipulate them, who can, especially the youth, who can be easily recruited by the extremist groups. And this will also lead to a situation which is very worse than we are in now. So that's why we are proposing civil military collaboration, taking as a model of governance, and expand this scheme to slowly to the various parts of it, because UNDP and other development actors have only one alternative: to work with the government institutions. If the government, what are the government institutions at the ground, closer to the people, must be identified, you know. So I think the viable option for the time being, the government institutions that are closer to the communities, where communities that are facing very much serious insecurity are only military military forces. So aligning with the military forces and enhancing their capacity to collaborate with the civilians and handle the community in a way that is amicable and in a way that less, you know, prone to human rights abuse and so on and so forth, definitely would bring a lot of, you know, innovative kind of governance system in the area, and the access issue would be easily solved. But this should be a scheme that should be started in a very small scale and expanded gradually. That's what I want to say. In terms of climate security, definitely Africa Borderlands Center, with its research and other programmatic actions, is very much actually focusing on, because it is one of actually the drivers of both conflict and food insecurity and all other challenges faced by the borderland community. So we really appreciate for the comment with regard to climate security. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Zenu. Other speakers, please 2 minutes for your responses. And I really want Eloy to consider the question on the offer for the adolescent girls, looking at the level of rape, sexual crimes, and manipulation, including allegedly from security forces. Eloy, over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Molaji. I would address some of the questions related to Amina Issa regarding this issue of selecting the priorities in terms of women, adolescents, and boys, the differentiation. So the approach is based on the community consultation. I think that Dr. Atta mentioned it earlier in one of his interventions. One of the key issue that we are addressing actually is the way that we communicate with the communities to find out the key priorities. And you have to bear in mind that a stabilization program have a time frame of 18 to 24 months. So we are going to address the key needs that can create the foundation of restoring the state in the region, giving up to the community. So from these different consultation, we find the priorities for women, young, and etc., and we address it in terms of a priority to give up and the needs of the population in the region. The issue of Golda King mentioned a question related to how we appreciate the support with the state. Here in Niger, we have a very good interaction through the Ministry of Interior and Decentralization. We are supporting a part of the stabilization program. We have other UNDP core mandate program in terms of local governance supporting also this entity. And we create bridges between our core intervention, the stabilization intervention, and other partners intervening in the region. So yes, we have a very good relation with the government through the Ministry of Interior and Decentralization. I think Jean-Pierre mentioned also a question, very critical one, and I think it's a strategic question when he make he present the fact that the conflict is there for a long time, etc., and how the situation could evolve. I think that we have the three dimensions of this issue: the political, the military, and the socio-economic one. So what we are dealing with the authorities, we talk at the high level in terms of policy dialogue to put the emphasis on the need for them to collaborate, to cooperate with at the regional level, and this plaidoyer, this advocacy contributed to put the situation, the government more aware about what is the political issue that they have to solve at the very high level. The military issue also with the cooperation that we have with other bilateral or multilateral partners. And the socio-economic is the way where we can act directly with the community to support them and to give them hope. So I don't know if I missed some of the points, but for me, the most important is that we are in the program. Stabilization is the program. We are creating the foundation to have to restore the credibility of the state, rule of law, etc., and to prepare the ground for a development program in terms of implementation. I will stop here.
Thank you, Eloy. But just before we go to Father Bakindo, there is a specific question on what are the current CSO identification, empowerment, and connecting initiatives. If you could cite examples from Niger of how you have engaged with civil society, because this is also critical to sustainability. Please, Eloy, before we go to Father Bakindo.
Yes, if I understood the question, the way that we are doing with the community and the military forces in terms of communication, I think the point here is the way that we start to define the priorities and the involvement of the community in terms of implementation of activities that are selected. We make the link with the local government and the local entities who are going to implement, and we give them the support, reinforce the capacity, and it is in doing this dialogue that we see who are the key actors, the leaders, religious leaders, opinions leaders, etc., are those people that we factor in to create this very inclusive and comprehensive approach for the implementation of our activities in the field.
Thank you very much, Father Bakindo. Over to you.
You mentioned something on the Governors Forum, the creation of the Governors Forum. I think that is coming on the back of the increasing collaboration between these terrorist activities and the header farmer conflict with the kidnapping that we have seen not only in central Nigeria, in the northwest, right up to the border, Kebbi State and other Lake Chad border countries, right up to Burkina Faso that we have seen. And that has actually been very, very worrying, particularly for some other state governors, either in Cameroon here or in Niger. What should we do to improve the way the Governors Forum should function? I think the first thing is that most of the conflicts faced by the different state governors in any of these Lake Chad border countries, they are very internal, and they are the ones that deal with the local population. So the federal governments of the different states should help the state governors deal with the issues of unemployment, deal with the issues of lack of jobs, and how to mitigate some of their internal issues. And then the next thing is, if they can increase even the collaboration between these different governors, and then the number of the state governors actually on that forum, in my opinion, should be increased. If you look at how big Nigeria is, only 3 state governors are on that forum. But the kind of internal problem that we have, which has spilled into the Lake Chad border area, go beyond even the 3 state governors. And that is why you can see the southern governors insist that you have to ban open grazing. And the northern governors are saying you should not ban because it is unconstitutional. And a lot of people in the south believe, particularly the governors, that these headers who are collaborating now with the terrorists are not Nigerians. They are also coming in from Niger, from Chad, from Cameroon. And is there a way they can talk to their own governors at the other side, of the lake? So rather than reducing that number to just 3 governors in a country like Nigeria or even Cameroon or Chad, I think the number should be increased. The level of collaboration between the governors should be improved, and then the federal government should help the governors deal with some of their internal, issues that seem to motivate this.
Thank you very much.
Can you hear me?
Brother Bakin.
Thank you.
Hello?
Yes. Thank you, I can hear you.
Okay. But I want to specifically ask a question on reconciliation. This is, what we have not really talked much about. And we know that if reconciliation efforts are not going on as smoothly as possible, this could even lead to reversals and other challenges. From the field, Father Bakindo, what is the current situation and what are opportunities for organizations such as UNDP and other development partners to latch on to these local initiatives to further strengthen stabilization in the Lake Chad? And also for Eloy, I think it's important also to look at the issue of engaging traditional and religious leaders in the local engagements, in your stabilization program. We did not see much of that in the video that was screened. Would you like to say a little bit more on this? But I start with Father Bakindo.
So if you look at the different DDRR programs, the PCBE program, either in Cameroon or Chad, there's a bit of concentration on dealing with the perpetrators, which is quite understandable, because the government doesn't want these terrorist groups to grow and grow and grow. But in the local communities, there are serious issues of lack of community engagement and lack of creating platforms for reconciliation, particularly using and deploying religious institutions and religious leaders. And this is exactly what is coming up. For example, last week I was in Borno State. In Borno, Yobe, and even Adama, even they call it the Northeast Governors Forum. People are literally calling for the government to simply remove the Operation Safe Corridor. They don't want it because government is spending money on perpetrators, and victims and communities are left and neglected. So I think that I mentioned it before, at the center of it, you must create a platform for reconciliation. You must listen to the communities. You must understand their situation, their lack, their grievances, and you must address that alongside, trying to attend to the issue of the perpetrators. And the final point I would make is that when you are dealing with the issue of reconciliation, I think two things must happen simultaneously. Number one, perpetrators that have committed serious crimes, honestly, they should be seen to be held to account, because that will assuage the local communities. Otherwise, you are going to just improve the culture of impunity. So let those who have raped and maimed and killed and destroyed, and investigations are being carried out, let communities see that these people have been held to account. Other low-risk people that have been arrested without evidence, let platform for reconciliation with the communities, be established, and let communities be engaged. But the engagement should not just be theoretical or verbal. It should go alongside addressing the socio-economic conditions of these victims in these communities. That's the only way that reconciliation can make any headway at all. Thank you.
Eloy, over to you, please.
Thank you, Wulaji. I think that the issue of reconciliation is a key in terms of a stabilization process or program. So we deal with they call it Haute Autorité pour la Consolidation de la Paix, High Commission for Peace Consolidation. And this is the national entity that we work with to implement the local peace consolidation committee in the 6 localities selected for the Lake Basin in the Difa region. So we built this local committee, and this local committee has the mandate to bring all the stakeholders who are in conflicts. For example, agriculture versus this éleveur, who are the cow and so on. And this local committee is trying to address the conflict issue, discuss with them, and report to the whole commission. And this high commission gives the instruction to the local authorities to solve the problem in terms of having the decision made in favor of, and the construction of the infrastructure also helps to solve the problem issue of having the water in the region, how this fields should be not only for the agriculture, but also the people can send the cows into to the transhumanism between these different regions. So our key element is at the high level, national level, the high commission, and at the local level, we build this local committee where local leaders like religious are involved, women and youth, etc. I think this is the way that we proceed to solve the conflictual situation in the perspective of reconciliation. Over to you.
Thank you very much. I think we have only one last question now from Angela. But before we answer the question, I would really like to recap some of the key highlights of the discussion so far. I think it's important to mention that regional coordination is still a weak link, a weak area in this process and should be strengthened. We also see the absence of robust civil-military coordination as an important challenge. But also, in spite of all that has been done, even though we saw the video of women, we still have not seen very clearly how some of the most vulnerable women, including those that are being impacted by sexual violence, are being, taken on board in this program. But also talking of sustainability, we see the need to transit from stabilization to development, and how a deliberate strategy can be couched in this respect. And then the issue of sharing of information has been mentioned by Father Bakindo and a lot. But in wrapping up, I think it's important to also look at Angela Lusegi's question. She's looking at accountability framework at the community. She's asking, how can we institutionalize some of these non-formal institutions that are community-based but lack legitimacy, quote and unquote, and voice? And some of them are very powerful. We've seen some of these people broker peace agreement and negotiate release of hostages and so on and so forth. How can we work with this type of players the more? So just to give you the final opportunity, 2 minutes each to each panelist to round up, your final comment, and also if you could share your reflection on Angela's question. Thank you very much. Sorry, I start with Father Bakindo, and then we go to Eloy, and then we go to Zenu to have the final word, and then we round up. Father Bakindo.
I saw Angela's question. I was actually typing to respond to that, and I think it's a very interesting question. And my answer to this is that every lectured country must first of all recognize and see the relevance of some of these local-based initiatives that are important because they are contextual, they are linked to the cultural and religious sensitivities of the people of those areas. So when the government recognizes the importance, then they can now bring it in and adapt it to the justice system to see how it can be accommodated and then it can be formalized. The challenge you have is that a lot of the governments don't even seem to agree with some of these local initiatives. And local communities also have seen that they remain vulnerable. Government is not able to provide them with the security that they need. So they have literally taken the law into their hands and simply provided the strategies and the means for them to do something to defend themselves. That was how this the vigilante group started in Nigeria. It was later on that the government didn't have any choice than to adapt them, to formalize them, and then give them the mandate to function along with the security agencies. So the government should recognize their importance. After recognizing their importance, the government should then adopt that, and that can be supported by international development partners, by UNDP, who will provide the capacity, the training that will be needed, for that. And I think that finally, it can even become part of the regional stabilization framework that will be needed because they will really be very, very good. Because they are the local communities that exist, along those areas. So I think that this is my answer to that. And that's my final contribution. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Father Bakindo. Over to you, Ellen.
Okay, thank you. For me, 3 key points to conclude on my contributions. The first one is related to the coordination at the national level and the regional level. I think it is very important to for all of us as actors supporting the national countries in the region to have a clear vision of what stabilization can provide in terms of paving the development path, so that we can make the synergy of our effort so that we can have a greater benefit for the population we are supporting through the government. The second point is that the issue of the military forces in terms of coordination. I think it's a key element in terms of securing the space where we are making the investment in terms of infrastructure, not only physical infrastructure, but social infrastructure, and also the mental construction, so that we can have a more resilient community and people, women and youth, that can contribute to the objective of having a stabilized region, and also start the development initiative that we are pushing. The last one is one very important point in terms of information sharing that was mentioned earlier. I think it is key for all of us to share our reports and the evaluation, so that we can learn from each other in where we fail and where we succeed, and we can build on our succeed, avoiding our failures. I will stop here, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to share some of the key elements of our experience here in Niger. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zenu.
Thank you very much, Bolaji. Actually, from my observation during my mission to the region, the Sahel region, what I have observed is that, especially in the borderland regions of the Sahel, I have observed there is no social contract, or very weak social contract. There is no, in a political science term, there is no state-society relationship, or very weak, frayed kind of state-society relationship. There are no state institution presence is also very limited. And in this situation, the conflict is continuing and actually protracted. So to come up with a very innovative kind of addressing the challenge, we need to really look back and reflect back, and we have to investigate what have we done so far, what is missing that we were supposed to do, and why the conflict is protracted this much is the most important actually thing for me to do. So in this regard, you know, the most important and pragmatic way, especially UNDP without institution, government institutions, or some institutions, sorts of public institutions, UNDP cannot operate in the vacuum alone. So mapping of the institutions in this kind of context, which institutions are there that UNDP can work with? For instance, I'm still focusing on the military. Military are there to secure, to defend the communities and address the security challenges around. And in this area, maybe the only viable institution in the area is military or defense institution. So how can UNDP innovate, create an innovative governance model to work with this institution? I think the very critical aspect. The second aspect, which I believe is very much ignored and not worked on, is public institutions, traditional institutions. You know, even if there is no government, the statehood is very limited. It doesn't mean that those places are in a state of anarchy. They have their own rules and their own traditional way of managing their own affairs. How can we use these traditional institutions as an entry point to access the population? And then it's after that we can come up with a sort of development ideas, economic, socio-economic approach, and other political engagement, and so on and so forth would come later. So we have to be pragmatic enough and innovative enough actually to come up with step-by-step stabilization models. That's what I am suggesting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Zenu. Thank you, Eloy. Thanks so much, Atta. With your final interventions, we are coming gradually to the end of this development dialogue series. A great thanks to colleagues who have taken the time to attend, but also to our colleagues who have provided technical support to this process. The next stage for us, based on the perspective you have shared, we see a lot of progress, but we see also a number of challenges. So the next step for us is to curate the major, points that you have all raised, and then we put them together in a report, and we engage with the countries in the region to see how we can support you further in the stabilization process, particularly by doing a very good retrospective review of what you have done so far. And then hopefully we can develop this into something that will improve the quality of the delivery of our stabilization program. Many thanks for colleagues who also provided the video and those who also asked questions during this session. We hope to see you again sometime soon. For those in New York, we wish you a nice day. And for those in Africa, a very good evening to you. Thank you very much, and bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, all of you. Thanks.